I'm going to begin with a question. What do a radical feminist contemporary artist and a scholar of ancient Rome have in common? Well, more than you might think is the answer. I first encountered Linder when I received an email from her back in September 2017, an email that actually appears to have gone straight to my clutter. Linder was gracious enough to send a second email a couple of months later, for which I am very grateful. I confess, as a classicist with his head in ancient Greece and Rome, my first thought was, who is this Linder Sterling? Google and Wikipedia came to the rescue. Then I realised she's actually quite famous. I reread the email, read back over the original email that Linder had resent. I learned a lot about Chatsworth House, incense burners, the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire, and I saw that Linder had actually taken the time to read my book on Greek and Roman smells. And I thought, wow, this seems like a really interesting project. And as an academic, I'm professionally committed to what we call outreach and impact. So doing things in academia that are relevant not just to students and academics, but to the wider public, that make a difference to people's lives. So as a result of this, I started to look a little bit more closely at Linder's work. So let's take this fairly recent photomontage by Linder called Origin of the World from 2016, 4 years ago. What do I see? I see an erotic black and white figure of a woman crouching down. I see perhaps a gay male nude, ripped with a six-pack, with his hands on his hips. I see a caterpillar which is very tellingly postured within that photomontage. There are also bits of furniture, a chair. There are plants, there are trees, there's sky. So this photomontage is a projection of layered meanings, of snapshots of different periods. It shows human bodies, it shows nature, it shows senses, it shows colour, it shows fragrant petals, it shows vibrant plants. And I thought, well, the methodology here isn't so very different from the methodology that I have to work with when I do ancient history, and I have to deal with fragments. I have to layer fragments on top of each other. It's like building a jigsaw puzzle in order to construct a story, to construct a narrative. So for me, ancient history is essentially creativity with footnotes. So let's give you an example. What do we have here on the left? This is what we call the Crouching Aphrodite. It's a life-size sculpture of the goddess Aphrodite, who would normally be standing upright as the perfect female form. And the Crouching Aphrodite gets her and makes her kneel down and amplifies all those human characteristics, the folds of fat on the belly, the erotic, slightly vulnerable nature of a goddess who is sort of behaving in what you might describe as a subjugated form. And this was a sculpture that was produced in Greece, in the Greek states in the 4th century BC, in the Hellenistic period. And then it was copied again and again by later Greeks and Romans and became a kind of showpiece in every respectable aristocratic house. And what's interesting here is Aphrodite is herself partly missing. She's in fragments, bits of her body are missing, a little bit like Linder's montage. And here's one of Linder's early works. This is Pretty Girls from 1976, where again you've got an erotic female figure, herself crouching down. Her head is missing and is covered by the camera that is, in a sense, the viewer turning her into an exhibit, something to be looked at. And she's doing something slightly daring with bottles of spirits, something that's slightly unseemly. And in that respect, I guess, it is behaving a little bit like the Crouching Aphrodite. And here's another example of one of Linder's collages from 1977, showing a gay male pin-up with a flower over his privates. And again, wearing items of clothing that are fairly suggestive, that connect him to particular areas of life and activity. So very much a Linderism in terms of male erotic collage. And here's a second example from my repertoire. This is a colossal bronze statue of the 3rd century AD Roman Emperor Trebonianus Gallus. He's standing upright, bold, nude, wearing boxer shoes, with a serious elderly statesman's face, but superimposed on a wrestler's fairly stocky naked body. So this man means business. And as it happens, this statue was also modelled after archetypal statues of Alexander the Great. So in a sense, this is an example of ancient collage with lots of nuances, lots of layers that tell you about sexuality, about power, about authority, about authenticity, youth, experience, strength, heroic nudity, and so on and so forth. And here we've got another piece of well-known Hellenistic sculpture. This is called a Hermaphroditus. And from the back it looks like a female erotic figure lying down seductively and suggestively. But it depends what angle you look at her from. You go around the front and you see she's got man's bits. So that idea of perspective, of sort of layered meanings comes across very neatly in this piece of sculpture. And here we have a 2012 collage by Linder, Myth of the Birth of the Hero 4, which shows a gay male erotic nude lying on a sofa, drink in hand, cowboy hat on, shoes and socks, with very much trademark Linder, a flower positioned over his anus. Again, making suggestive implications about the role of the male body, the assimilation to features associated with female bodies. So actually, all in all, I started to think there are really lots of very interesting overlaps between Linder's interests and my interests, between our various approaches to visual culture, both ancient and modern. So for the rest of this mini lecture, I'm going to focus on 3 key themes. The first is the idea of layering that characterises both Linder's photomontage and the academic reconstruction and reception of our classical past, which is what underpins my work. Secondly, I'm going to focus on our common interests in gendered bodies and the selective promotion and repression of certain bodily traits in different historical periods and contexts. And finally, I'm going to focus on the role of the senses, sensation and sensuality, in discriminating, understanding and evaluating bodies, behaviour and identity. And I'm particularly interested, as is Linder, in the lower senses of smell, taste and touch, which are themselves often rejected in favour of the more privileged and respected perspectives permitted by sight and sound. Although I've done various things with Linder in the last 2 years or so, I'm going to concentrate on our early work together and our collaboration in the first half of 2018 at Chatsworth House and Nottingham Contemporary Art Gallery. So Linder was artist in residence at Chatsworth House in the latter half of 2017 and the first half of 2018. And her job was to do some work on the collections in Chatsworth House and bring them together for an exhibition in the spring of 2018. And at the same time, she'd also taken on the task of putting together a connected exhibition at Nottingham Contemporary Art Gallery. So she'd taken rather a lot on at the same time. Now, Chatsworth is a stately home belonging to the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire, and it's been passed down through 16 generations of the Cavendish family. And what you see is an entirely artificial landscape. Nothing here is natural. It purports to have links with the ancient Greek region of Arcadia, a classical utopian vision of harmony with nature. And Chatsworth is itself a sort of paradigm of montage art, with different layers of historical meaning superimposed on top of each other. It is also a masterpiece of technical ingenuity and landscape engineering. It reminds me a little bit of what we know about Nero's Golden House, built in the middle of the city of Rome following the Great Fire of AD 64. And this itself was an amazing, spectacular monument, a palace to Nero, and a setting which was open as a gift to the Roman people, bringing together the most extraordinary feats of engineering and the merging of nature and culture under the aegis of Imperial Rome. So why did Linder decide to get in touch with me in particular? My background is I'm a classicist who works on the history of the senses and sensory perception in the Greek and Roman world. I have a particular interest myself in ancient Rome, but I've worked with colleagues from all different areas of classical antiquity to produce in the last 6 years a series of volumes for Routledge on each of the senses in the ancient world. So sight, sound, smell, taste and touch, as well as a volume on synesthesia, which is how all the different senses come together. And I've got a particular interest in smell, so I was personally responsible for the volume on smell and the ancient senses. So during her residency at Chatsworth, Linder developed a particular interest in the role of incense in Chatsworth House and its connection to sense and sensation, the way people experience the house, and particularly how the senses invoked different aspects of its classical heritage. And just before Linder started her residency, I'd just organised a conference in Rome called Sensing Divinity, which looked at ancient uses of incense. And Linder had herself spotted that conference, and that's what prompted her to get in touch with me. So here are a couple of photos of us at work in the painted hall in Chatsworth House in the weeks leading up to the exhibition at Chatsworth. And I paid a visit together with Linder and a colleague of mine from Toulouse, Adeline, who works with a team who reproduces ancient incense recipes, and also my PhD student Pithier, who was at the time just completing her PhD on smell and odour and perfume in the female body. And we all got together to explore how we thought smell and incense could operate as a kind of thinking tool within this particular part of Chatsworth House. So one of the outputs of this work was an exhibition at Chatsworth called Her Graceland, which showcased the admiration of the late Dowager Duchess Deborah Devonshire for Elvis Presley. And it showed a series of artistic arrangements that animated the multi-layered themes and associations that were captured within the history of Chatsworth House. And one key aspect of this exhibition was the idea of fame, the transitoriness of fame, and the way fame is subject to change and metamorphosis. And the highlight for me was the fascinating painted hall that I showed you a couple of slides ago. And the murals of the painted hall told the story of the rapid rise and fall of the Roman dictator Julius Caesar, and then his subsequent apotheosis, his deification where he joined the gods, and his arrival among the gods is heralded by the goddess Fame on the ceiling blowing a trumpet. And in this hall, Linder had arranged, following the work we did, a giant incense burner which greeted the noses of visitors with its hallowed scents. It also showcased Elvis's image, photomontaged by Linder, which decorated two giant vinyl capes positioned on the balconies overlooking the painted hall. So here you have a few images from the painted hall during the exhibition, showing how Linder's art carefully, subtly implicates itself in the context of the original art within this part of Chatsworth House. In another part of the house, Linder had worked her magic on the sculpture gallery, using photomontage as well as acoustic effects to breathe new life into a classical environment. And as a product of the grand tour, the gallery was intended to be sensuous and sensational, and Linder's display made it exactly that. The collage that you can see in the image in front of you, for example, purposefully juxtaposes and layers classical and modern bodies in different stages of clothing and nakedness, and sets colour alongside black and white imagery, delicate flowers alongside hard stone, humans alongside animals. And Linder's work in Chatsworth led to a connected exhibition launched at more or less the same time at Nottingham Contemporary Art Gallery. And this exhibition was called The House of Fame, and it exhibited Linder's artistic work from across the last few decades, bringing in aspects of Chatsworth to enrich our understanding of Linder's approach to collage. And this exhibition comprised 4 connected spaces: the House of the Future, the House of Rest, the House of Unrest, and the Abode of Sound. This was a strikingly multi-sensory celebration of sight and sound, as well as showcasing Linder's artistic penchant for evoking smell, taste, and touch. One of Linder's collages at this exhibition was the Pithier, its title referring to the priestess of Apollo at the Oracle in Delphi. And this is a montage based upon a close-up of Maria Cosway's well-known portrait of Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire from the late 18th century, but with her face engulfed here by the coiled snake that was a common motif found all over Chatsworth House. It showcases the monster that is coiled at the heart of the oracle, stifling the woman's voice and preparing to inflict the truth on those that encounter it. The resonances between Linder's work and my work didn't end there. So Linder went on shortly afterwards to undertake some project work at Southwark Underground Station, resulting in an exhibition called The Power of Bliss, which was part of the Art on the Underground series. And this involved Linder dealing with a lot of records, archives and imagery from the last 100 years, which were found in the site at Southwark, some of which demonstrated some striking classical influences and resonances. So here you have an example of a train conductor in the same pose as the Emperor Augustus, the statue that we were just talking about. And I also have particular interests in underground Rome, the city of Rome, the bits that were buried underground, which are actually, ironically, the best well-preserved bits, but which represented, in a sense, the underbelly of Rome, the bits that were hidden away. And there's been lots of fascinating recent work in archaeology and history on these underground bits of Rome, most recently brought to light by the long-term excavation of a third metro line in the city of Rome, Metro C, which has been responsible for digging up a lot of classical artifacts, some of which are now being displayed in quite a striking way in the hyper-modern setting of the new underground stations. And for the Power of Bliss exhibition, Linder reproduced some of her interests in human orifices, in bodily fluids, and in that kind of slightly uneasy space between boundaries and the inside and the outside of the body. And I've also just recently finished a project which is a volume looking at bodily fluids and fluid bodies in Greek and Roman antiquity. And I'm also interested in mouths and the underground. And here we have the Bocca della Verità, the mouth of truth, which is an enormous marble disc on display outside a church in Rome, which displays the face of the god Ocean. And this was a disc which is believed to have been a manhole cover to the great sewer of Rome, swallowing up the waste into the sewer and then ejecting it out into the Tiber. And here on the right you can see the monumental mouth of the sewer ejecting all of that waste into the river. And all of these various shared interests led to a joint visit by myself and Linder to the British School at Rome in November 2018, where we did a joint conversation. And this brought together a lot of these ideas that I've been talking about, and it brought together in the audience the artists and the academics who were resident in the British School at Rome and in the various institutes and academies around Rome. The British School at Rome is an institution that's very much trying to work out how the world of art and the world of academia can operate together. And I would say academia is much more open now to breaking down boundaries, to exploring broader cultural ideas like gender and sexuality, bodies and bodily fluids, purity and pollution, senses and sensation. And of course art is a means of expressing complex, ambiguous and provocative ideas. It's a channel for communicating the incommunicable and stimulating interest and creative thought. And I would finish by saying that Linder's penchant for montage resonates for me with the layered and fragmented experiences of classical antiquity over the past 3,000 years, which were themselves a kind of collage or palimpsest, in which memories and layers, senses and sensations have always been how people made sense of their environment and their history. So thank you for listening. I would be very interested in any questions you have or ideas or suggestions. Please do email me at mark.bradley@nottingham.ac.uk. Thank you.